Good morning, and welcome to Gray Man Walking.
Or Gray Man Not Walking.
Gray Man Not Walking. This is going to be the first of our post-trail videos. We picked the easy one today because Slider's getting ready to go on vacation for a week, and she needs to edit this one pretty quickly and get it up for you folks.
Being trail secretary took a lot out of me, so I'm going to take a vacation.
I think what our goal is, we're going to have a handful of these videos, and I think we're going to try to put them out once a week on Tuesdays. So we're going to try to get that done for this week, and then I'll work on stuff while she's gone. But what we want to talk about this morning is our strategy for managing entering Baxter State Park as thru hiker. So as our plans came together, I've known from the beginning pretty much that I wanted Evan to summit with me. Y'all might have picked up on the fact that rock scrambling, rock climbing, mountain climbing kind of works on old Gray Man. He's pretty good with the walking and the hiking, but when it comes to climbing, and particularly being on the edge, being close to that exposure, a chance of falling 3,000 feet to your death, kind of works on me. So I knew I wanted Brewer to summit with me, so if I did get anxious or nervous about getting past a hard spot, he'd be there to talk me off the cliff, so to speak. But the more we planned, we figured that Slider could come and pick us up, take us home. She could summit with us as well. So I asked her, I said, you need to look at all the Baxter State Park regulations. You need to figure it out. I said, I've got hiker brain, I can't figure it out. You got to deal with it, so you need to know it. So I put it all on her to figure out how to manage Baxter. And she ended up coming up with something pretty good that we wanted to share with hikers. And just to give you just a little more background, Baxter probably has a few more regulations because of the nature of how they acquired the land. It was a gift to the state, and it came with a lot of stipulations. So it is actually run and administered a little differently than a lot of state parks around the country. So the hikers have this little apprehension about how to negotiate it, what's going to happen, and this also kind of ties in with a little something else. When people talk about fear mongering, a lot of times they want to kind of put the blame on somebody who says, oh, it's going to be tough going through the whites, or oh, you got a terrible river crossing up ahead, or you've got a big river crossing up ahead. No matter what they say, I think we also interpret that worse than it really is. It's not necessarily that they're saying it's worse than it is. It's whatever they say, we seem in our minds to make it worse than it is. So I think both sides there are kind of blamed when it talks to fear mongering. And I did have some apprehension about what would happen in Baxter State Park. As it turns out, I think they go over and above to try to help these thru hikers get in, get up the mountain, and get out. The birches will hold 12 thru hikers, but if there's more than 12 going in on a certain day, they will find other spots, Katahdin stream or wherever. In fact, one day, a day or two before I summited, I think they said they had 20 thru hikers for the day. So there's a guy there right now that hangs around the A-Bowl store, and his name is Don. He works for the park, and he's there to give the hikers these information, get them oriented on what they need to do and what they expect. And so whenever hikers get to A-Ball, they need to look for Don, get the scoop, and that'll go a whole to alleviating some of these fears. Anyway, Slider, I did ask you to look at all the regulations. Tell us a little bit about what you learned when we were trying to figure out how we could access Baxter with the least amount of grief.
So, Great Man figured out that, as a thru hiker, and they consider a long distance hiker someone coming who can stay at the Birches as someone who starts at Monson. So anyone who comes from that far can get through and stay at the Birches. But the real, not struggle, but the thing that I had to navigate or figure out was how to sync up with them and make sure that I could be there during the same time that they were, which, we know going into it, it could be this range of days, right? So it was not this, we're going to be here on Tuesday, like, you figured that out. It was kind of flexible and fluid until they got closer, and then we could kind of pinpoint a window. So what I did was I went on the park website and read all the information that was there. The website's a little sparse, but it has enough to get started, to figure out, what the next step is. And so I ended up looking on there to go buy a parking permit, because that was the thing that you need to access. So they limit the amount of people who can enter the park and summit Katahdin based on a parking permit system for people who are not already inside of the park. So that was what I, in my research, had read was, okay, I need to get a hotel room in Millinocket, which is the closest town, and then I need to get a parking permit so that I can get into the park, and then I can summit. But the more I researched, and I ended up calling and talking to the park, I guess it was their information reservation desk, was that the thing that wasn't easily available or understood on the website was that Millinocket is about 20 to 30 minutes outside of the park gate. And then the Birches campsite, which is a little ways from the hunt trail head at the bottom of Katahdin, it takes 30 minutes to get there. So you're looking at 45 minutes to an hour drive time from Millinocket if you're trying to summit with a thru hiker. So that was problematic because they don't open the gate until 6, I think. So if I was to buy a parking permit, I wouldn't be able to get to the gate until 6, and then I wouldn't be able to get inside until 6:30. So that would have delayed our start time to begin with. But then whenever I was trying to get my parking permit, they were all sold out. So I had a little mini freak out because I was like, oh, well, how am I going to get inside the park if I can't get a parking permit? And then the alternative to that was, well, you can sit in the waiting lane to see if someone who has gotten a parking permit doesn't show up, and then you're going to be given access. So then that would have delayed our start time potentially by another hour if I was able to get in. So whenever I called the park and asked them, I was just like, hey, can you help me figure out how I can make this happen? I have got 2 thru hikers who are coming. I'm trying to summit with them, and I need to figure out how to make this happen. And she said, the best thing you could do is get inside the park first. So what I did was I booked a camping spot for myself inside of the park for 3 days, knowing that this was going to cover my window of time when Brewer and Grayman were potentially going to be entering the park. So the place that I stayed was another 30-minute drive from the Birches, but because I was already in the park, I could get to the hunt trailhead whatever time and park in the parking lot. So I wasn't limited by, I didn't need an additional parking pass or anything like that. So we found out that getting inside of the park is the key for if you're trying to summit with a thru hiker, and getting a camping spot. Ideally, if I could have gotten a camping spot at Katahdin Stream Campground, that would have been perfect because that's just right down from the Birches. But another, not issue that we ran into, but another thing that was happening was the summit was around Labor Day weekend, and there was a big event happening that happens every year that weekend. So that's a super busy weekend for Baxter State Park. So getting a camping spot was a little bit more difficult because there was a lot of, it was kind of filled up. So, but where I stayed, but you all saw in the video, it was beautiful. No one's upset about it. So, but I stayed in there and I got up at 3:30 and I drove down to the Birches and we got our breakfast and we went to the parking lot, and I think there was one other car there, and it was easy peasy. So that was the one thing that we figured out was the key was to, if you're syncing up with a thru hiker, is get inside of the park, because then you're kind of free to go wherever and do whatever. They're not gonna, stop you and say, well, you don't have a parking pass, like you can't come in here. Like, they kind of filter that parking pass issue on, they've got a ranger, I guess, who's communicating like, okay, we've got X amount of spots left, like you can let these many more people in. Yeah, so that was kind of the thing that we learned was get inside the park, because it takes a long time to get in the park. If you're thinking about getting a hotel in Millinocket, that's, you're adding a whole lot of time to your day right there. Even if you do get the parking pass, the parking permit, if you get that lined up, because you're not going to be able to start up the mountain until probably 6:30 or 7 at the earliest, or 7:30 if you get in the wait line.
And so obviously we're talking about, people who are planning on having a vehicle. So even if you're flying in to meet your hiker and renting a car, that'll work. And in Slider's case, she drove from home up. So she had her vehicle. And so even if, say, it was a really heavy hiker day, there was a great number of hikers, even if we'd have kind of been forced to say, well, we have a car, we can stay at one of the further away campgrounds, not a problem, that would have helped them out. But Katahdin Stream is a large campsite. It has lean-tos, it has tent sites. Where Slider stayed was actually a bunkhouse. It had 8 bunks in it.
8 bunks.
And the prices were reasonable for the bunkhouse and for the campsites. You remember what they were?
I think it was like less than $20 a night for me to stay. And then you do have to buy a park entry permit, which was like $16, I think. So,
yeah, but then that covers you're allowed to hike on that. You're allowed to park on that. And also they said something about like getting to the Katahdin Stream parking area early.
Yeah, so they said if you're inside of the park, that since the gate does open at 6, that the first cars that are going to be given entrance into the park would start arriving around 6:30, because it takes about 30 minutes to get there. The park road, there's one road inside. It's a almost 2-lane road, not quite, dirt road that the speed limit, you're going like 10, 20 miles per hour max. So it takes a long time to get through places in the park. So if you get there before 6:30, there's ample parking. But if if you're inside of the park, you're like, well, let's meet there at 8. Like, there might not be any parking spots at that point in time, because people have purchased permits have already been there. People who have been waiting and seeing if someone doesn't show up, they've been granted access and they're already there. So getting there before 6:30 is critical. Something else that we did that was not intentional, but just kind of what happened, was I met them at the A-Ball Pines. Is that what it's called? The private campground?
Actually, it's just the A-Ball store campground.
Okay.
A-Ball Pines, I believe, is the state campground. It has 6 or 8 spots. But go ahead.
Okay, so they told me they had service at some point that day and said, this is where we're going to be. Can you bring us McDonald's and 2 rolls of quarters? Turns out we didn't need the quarter.
Well, actually, we needed a couple, but this is a kind of the second part of the whole plan here. As a hiker, you're going to get the A-Ball Bridge first, and you're going to stay there overnight in most cases.
Whether it's at that private campground or the state campground.
Yeah.
But that's where you're going to stay the day before you walk into Baxter.
Yeah. So we opted to stay at the store side of it. Number one, that gave us access to a shower, and we also did our laundry. That's where the quarters came in. We thought the shower was going to be quarters, but the shower was not. Showers included with the stay in the A-Ball Bridge campground, and they have a choice of either cabins or campsites. So we opted for a cabin, but it would be, other people were there, they just camped, they set up like normal. But you're going to get to A-Ball Bridge, you're going to stay there overnight in most cases, and if it's bad weather the next day or 2 days from that, because you're going to spend 1 day walking to the Birches, and then you're going to summit the next day. If the weather's not favorable, you're just going to stay multiple nights at A-Ball till the weather window opens up for you. That gives you a little more hesitation because more hikers are around. The harder it's going to be to get in, but truthfully, that just didn't materialize. So we enjoyed our afternoon at A-Ball Bridge. Slider showed up with food. We'd already had cold drinks and snacks, and there was several other hikers around that we were visiting with. So we had a good afternoon there. We spent the night there. The weather looked good, so next day we walked to the Birches, and next day we summited.
But since I stayed there, I was supposed to stay in the camp or in Baxter State Park that night, but I ended up staying with them at A-Ball store.
Yeah.
And I was able to walk with them to the sign-in sheet in Baxter State Park for the Birches. So I knew that they had gotten a spot, and I knew that the next day we were going to summit. So that was also key because there's little to no cell phone service around the area. So if I had stayed in the park, the plan was, well, I'm just going to show up at the Birches at this time and see if y'all are there, kind of thing. But so that was a nice thing just to cut down on, is this going to work out for me to be there, to know that they got a spot at the Birches. And so then we walked up to the sign up sheet. It's a mile or less than,
a little less
than from the store. So they walked in early, put their name on the sheet. Can't do it before 7,
right,
because if you do, they're going to scratch it out. So they put their name on there, and then we walked back to the store, got some hot coffee. Brewer was really excited about that, and a tuna fish sandwich, which is not typical breakfast, but it was good. So we had that and hung out there for a little while, and then did some laundry, and then they took off, and I drove into the campground, or drove into Baxter State Park and got myself set up and had a little nap. And then I went and met them, and we had dinner. So it all worked out well in terms of, I think that's another thing that can, if you're trying to sync up with someone outside, is like the lack of cell phone service, not being able to communicate with someone, letting them know, what the plan is, where, when, how. So me staying there that night before and knowing that they got a spot was good too, because that just, kind of scratched that what if off the plate.
Yep. So to kind of recap, you're going to come out of the 100 mile at A-Ball Bridge. You're probably going to stay there at least one night. That's the ideal place to meet your ride. Like I say, if you've got someone that's coming to pick you up, or someone is coming to summit with you and they have their car or a rental car, you're going to meet up with them then. Like I say, it was key that Slider spent the night with us there, so she knew that we had a spot in the Birches, and that everything just fell into place. So this is how we went about it. We thought it was really a very good thing to have someone inside the park with a vehicle, and it solved our communication problems and could have solved some potential where you're going to be in the park campground type situation. So we felt much relieved once we figured this out, and it's very hard to figure this stuff out ahead of time. You'll learn it as you do it. So that's why we're passing on to you all. You have anything else to add?
They say it's a 2-mile road walk from Hayball Stream or whatever it is back to Katahdin Stream. I don't think that's accurate.
You think it's a little longer?
I think it's longer.
Yeah.
So
we actually got picked up. We didn't walk the whole way. And then, as we were leaving, we met other hikers we knew walking down the road. So we had our car full, so I actually had to get out and stand beside the road while she took one of them back. Then she was coming back to me. She met the second one walking back. So they picked him up and took him back to Katahdin Stream. So I stood by the road for 20, 30 minutes there. But we shuttled a couple other hikers.
Slider shuttle service.
Slider shuttle. All right. So you notice that Slider's enjoying her morning coffee with Gray Man. I know several of you expressed that you enjoyed doing that. So, like I say, we got maybe 4 or 5 of these things total we'll do to wrap this thing up. If you have any specific questions or anything you want to know, you got a choice of waiting and taking care of that during our live, or you can put a couple questions in the comments. If there's anything you want us to cover in these post-trail videos, let us know. I can tell you so far, this been home, 2 weeks? I've been home 2 weeks, and no issues with anything post-trail. I'm still taking it easy, trying to get some feeling back in the bottoms of my feet. I don't know what's going to happen there, how long it might take if it ever comes back, but time will tell. But
You've been going this long without feeling in your feet.
that's right. Anyway, that's it for now. We'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
Bye.
All right, relax. Sit down. Ready?
Do you want to bring it closer to our faces?
Yeah, that's better. I like that. You want to start over so you don't have to edit all this out?
Nope, I'll just chop it off.
Chop it. All right.
Do you want me to slide in?
Slide in. No.
Good morning.
All right, here we go.